With 36 million people living with HIV worldwide, the need for awareness is as great as ever. My name is Evelyn Nyagaya, and I'll be talking about a reflection on close to 25 years into HIV/AIDS epidemic. To begin with, I will look into the HIV milestones. These are 5 milestones from when the epidemic began in the 1980s all the way to the reflections into 2015 and 2010. In the first phase, when this HIV/AIDS virus began, there was the understanding and learning phase. This was followed by the activist phase, where affected communities grew louder in battles for treatment and rights for those affected and infected by HIV/AIDS. This was followed by an advancement through breakthroughs in treatment, where the first highly active antiretroviral therapy was introduced between the year 2005 and 2006. After this, there was a reflection on treatment that had been introduced and monitoring through CD4 counts that resulted into decline in HIV/AIDS related deaths. Then came the momentum in 2013 when UNAIDS ambitious targets were set. Before I continue, I would like to mention that the data used for this presentation is from Averting HIV and AIDS organization, as well as the UNAIDS statistics. My next slide looks at new HIV infections and HIV-related deaths over time. From my bar graphs, since 1980 to the early 2000s, there was a steady increase in new infections as well as new HIV deaths. Why was this? During this time, we did not have any treatment for people who are living with HIV/AIDS, and as a result, the deaths and infections, new infections, continued to increase until the year 2005, when we saw a decline in HIV-related deaths and new infections as a result of introduction of the highly active antiretroviral therapy and more monitoring of those who are infected with HIV and AIDS. The next slide that I'm going to talk about is people living with HIV and AIDS and people living with HIV and AIDS who have been put on treatment over time. There have been tremendous milestones since 2005, when we began to see a number of people starting to receive treatment from the highly active antiretroviral therapy that was introduced during that time. And by the end of 2015, we had about 17 million people receiving treatment. Even though we had 17 million receiving treatment at the end of 2015, we still have a gap, since we have about 36 million people living with HIV. The fast track approach introduced by UNAIDS aims to avert 28 million deaths. 28 million new infections and 21 million AIDS-related deaths by the year 2030 by focusing on prioritizing prevention and treatment efforts in the first 5 years of the strategy. The approach comes with a set of targets for 2020. There is 90% of people living in HIV to know their HIV status, 90% of people who know their HIV positive status to be put on treatment, and 90% of people on treatment to have a suppressed viral load. What is our call for action as public health informaticians? Can we use data-driven data to drive decision making? My question to you is, how can public health informatics contribute to the use of data and mathematical models to focus where the epidemic is more concentrated? I'm looking up to you to give feedback and suggestions on this question. Thank you very much for listening.